Hello, welcome to This Dementia Life, created by Dementia Action Alliance. Our website is danow.org. I'm proud to be your host, Chuck McClatchy, and I live my dementia life with Alzheimer's disease. During this Dementia Life podcast, we will have interviews with inspiring people living with dementia and amazing people that care about us. My guest today is Steve Barbieri, who is an advocate, national spokesperson. Is just amazing work that he's been done. Steve, why don't you go in and kind of introduce yourself, kind of your background, and maybe get into a little bit about how you developed this passion to help other people going through this.
Thank you again. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today, Chuck. Again, my name is Stephen Barbieri. I live in Modesto, California. I was actually diagnosed with early onset dementia. This October 19th will start 10 years since I've been diagnosed. And like a lot of people, your diagnosis kind of sometimes changes. So mine actually started with mild cognitive impairment is what they started with. Then I went to pseudo dementia, and then we did a little research on pseudo dementia, which is the type of dementia that is curable because it's based on you get rid of the stress or the vitamin deficiency. So we were kind of happy when the doctor actually said pseudo dementia. But then it went from there. We finally got some additional testing, and I always recommend the best doctor you need to see is really a neurologist. So my neurologist started ordering a bunch of tests, and I was able to get the PET scan, which I think is, in my opinion, is most important test that you want to get on your brain. I know some insurances cover it and some don't, but I was very fortunate. My insurance covered most of it. I just had to do a deductible or whatever that's called, and they found damage on both sides of my temporal lobe. So of course they changed it to frontal temporal lobe dementia just based on those findings. The problem is nobody had ever had a life story with me. Nobody sat down and said, Stephen, tell me about yourself. So I used to be a vice president, district manager at Wells Fargo Bank. So at the beginning, I was showing up at some of these appointments after work or on the way to work or stuff. So I had a suit and tie, I was, Mr. GQ guy all dressed up. And so they never asked me lifestyle questions. So finally they sent me to an appointment that lasted 8 hours. And the guy was really great. He sat down his pen and pencil at the very beginning and he goes, tell me about yourself. I said, well, I was this happened. He goes, no. What do you do for fun? Tell me about your family. What do you like to do? And then it came out within the first 20 minutes. When he asked me what I like to do for fun, I said, I've done martial arts for like 42 years. And then just different things. And he asked me about any accidents I had. I say, I hit my head on a diving board. I got hit by a car. He noticed a scar on my forehead. I said I fell off a slide when I was younger and stuff. And then about 20 minutes without him writing anything down, he just says, before we go any further, I'm pretty sure that you're a classic case of somebody with CTE. And then I'm sure by the end of the day, we'll be more confirmed about that. So the CTE is kind of hard to pronounce. It's chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That's why they call it CTE. It's easier to pronounce. And when people ask me about that, they kind of like, I've heard of it, but I haven't heard about that. And I said, well, I believe it was 2012, the movie came out, Concussion. And that was the movie with Will Smith and Dr. Amala something or other, out of UC, he worked within the UC systems. He discovered it in the football players for the Steelers football players back there in Pittsburgh. And, he had done a lot of research and stuff. So I thought, wow, a movie about CTE, this is perfect. I don't know enough about it because I was just diagnosed like 6 months prior or 5 months prior to when this movie came out. So I was still trying to research information. So I took my wife and our 3 kids to the movie. Well, you would have thought that would have been a good idea. Well, if you haven't seen the movie, not to take away any suspense, but all the football players in the movies died, and they all died from suicide. So the number one side effect of my type of dementia is suicidal tendencies. So it's really important that I watch my medication. That's why it's very important when you do get a diagnosis of dementia to find out what type you have. It's just like when the doctor says you have cancer. Well, there's a difference between, do you have cancer in your toe, colon, in your heart, in your chest? I mean, there's different things that you need to do. And it's the same thing with dementia. So I really stress, just because you get that diagnosis of dementia, it's like saying ice cream. Well, what flavor do I have? You need to know. So you need to push further. So now that I know specifically that it's CTE, they've tried to put me on some other medications where I've read the side effects of, possible suicidal thoughts. And I'm like, well, my disease already puts me at a higher level. Now you're going to give me a drug that's going to increase that? No, I don't think so. So a lot of times we have to be our own best advocate. Like I said, the doctor was saying dementia, and I kept pushing her, which I didn't know the first time when she said dementia. We just went, okay, went home, kind of cried about it, and tried to do some research. And then we didn't realize that we needed to ask her what type of dementia. So again, anytime you hear that diagnosis or your doctor's using the phrase dementia, just say, okay, I understand what you're saying, but what type is it? Or what type do you think it is? Like an example, my type CTE, they say, cannot be 100% properly diagnosed without a autopsy. Well, I'm not ready for that test yet. So they can only assume based on lifestyle, based on conversations, based on certain things that they can see in the brain. And all of those things have led towards the fact that I'm a very high candidate to have CTE. I've actually donated my brain to Concussions Alliance, I think it's called, where I actually have a card that says I'm a brain donor. So if and when, I do pass, I've asked Tracy to make sure that gets there. So gets a chance to hopefully get that autopsy to confirm, what they see in it. And it's because, again, I've done martial arts for 40 plus years. I've been an athlete for a long time, besides working for Wells Fargo Bank for 32 years. And they find, it's very preferable in people that have done martial arts, that have done boxing. Back in the day, boxers, they used to use the phrase, oh, punch drunk, because, he's been punched in the head so many times. Well, in reality, those boxers have CTE, and a lot of them, like Muhammad Ali's, ended up going, his went from CTE into Parkinson's too, which probably was somewhere, I'm guessing, Parkinson's type dementia is probably something around the Lewy bodies area. So I almost think Muhammad Ali had like a Lewy body CTE combination or dual dementia, in my particular opinion. So I've been very blessed in a sense of getting connected with people. And I know it's hard. It was very hard to find. I use the phrase people like me, because when I was first diagnosed, I ended up contacting the Alzheimer's Association after a while, because I didn't contact them, because when I read the title of their organization, it said Alzheimer's Association. I said, well, I don't have Alzheimer's, so they're no help for me. Well, people didn't realize it. And actually, there's a lot of people that work for the Alzheimer's Association don't realize that's not their legal full 503c nonprofit name. It's actually the Alzheimer's Association and Other Related Dementias. So a lot of people didn't know that. Just over the years, they, like use shorten things or acronyms or whatever. So they've dropped that phrase. But it's nice that the Alzheimer's actually has increased their mission statement that now says, we're looking for a world without Alzheimer's and other related dementia. So it's nice that they've actually updated their mission statement to add that for more inclusiveness, and also for people to realize they handle more than just the Alzheimer's. So I got connected with them, and I highly recommend people get on Facebook, get on social media, because when I first got connected to a group of people like myself, I got grouped in, nothing against the Alzheimer's Association, just they had so many call groups or whatever. They said, Stephen, we can get you connected with people like you. They have a weekly call. I'm like, great. I get on that call. Everybody's in their 70s or early 80s. And here I am. At that time, I was diagnosed at age 51. So I'm probably around 52 at that time, by the time I'm starting to get on these calls. So I'm 52. These people are in their 70s. I couldn't really relate with them in a sense, because I was asking, so, because I really believed in the exercise before it really came out about doing the exercise every single day. I started doing that. And then, a couple of years later, the Alzheimer's Association had a big pushing, that's the number one medication out there is exercise. Well, I kind of found out earlier, and I was asking people, well, what type of exercise do you do? And again, when you get into your 70s, you end up getting other health issues. People had hip problems, they had this, they that, they couldn't relate. And then pretty soon I was telling them, I said, well, if you can't run, you may be able to do water aerobics because the water will support you. You get your body moving or whatnot and stuff. You really need to get off the couch. And then I was a big advocate about supplements, about taking vitamin D, because again, vitamin D actually would have gotten rid of if I had pseudo dementia, a vitamin D deficiency, as well as magnesium, as well as stress. And then social media has been phenomenal. That's actually how I met you. I mean, if it wasn't for Facebook and social media, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Mike. I wouldn't have met Brenda, all those things. And like you spoke earlier about the Dementia Minds, there was something on Facebook. I can't tell you exactly what it said or how it said, but it was something on Facebook that says, hey, I'm looking for people that are similar about this, that want to get together and share thoughts and ideas. And I said, sure, I'm in. And I clicked yes to it. And I think a few other people, and that just snowballed and, you know, got going on that. I'm actually, you know, in some specific CTE groups on Facebook where we just talk about, you know, challenges and, you know, different things that we have to deal with, which is great because now I'm just dealing with specific people with CTE at the same time. And then I've been very blessed that I've had the opportunity to have a voice. And I think the nice thing is that they're actually hearing firsthand information from people like us. So I use the example, if I was a woman, I was going to have a baby, and I was going to see a doctor who was a male, who's never had a baby, and he's telling me all these things to do. And as a woman, you're thinking, yeah, right, you've never had a baby, even though you've been a whatever a baby doctor's name is. I can't think of the word right now. I have a lot of word finding problems. Words don't come to me quickly. But if you end up having a doctor, your baby doctor, and it's a woman who's had 6 kids, and she's telling you what to do, and she's telling you real life experiences, I'm just telling you as a person, if I was a woman, I would choose the doctor that's had 6 babies before, that's actually been through it, that can actually tell me real life experiences. And I think that's the advantage we have, is that we can tell you the real things. You're not second guessing. You're not hearing what we think is important. I do think it's important to hear from a caregiver's point of view, but it's more about what they're dealing with as a caregiver and what they think or what they see their person that they're dealing with or their spouse is going through. But at the same time, they're not an expert on the disease because they don't have it. So I think finally the world has realized that we need to talk to people that have the disease, and the best people to talk to are people that have early onset, or even people in the middle, or even people further towards the end. If you catch them at a good day, the right time of day, to interview them and ask them their questions, what their needs and wants are, I think you're going to get better information. So like an example, your podcast that you have today, you have a different type of dementia, yet we still have a very similar, that a lot of the things we can talk about or things that have happened to us may not be 100% the same, but it's very similar. And that's the nice thing about talking to people like ourselves, because you'll say one thing and also like, oh my God, that happens to me too, but I do this, or this happens to me, but it's similar, but I get it around 2 o'clock, not 1, but yeah, I get tired just like you. And it makes you feel better that, oh, I'm not the only one that has to nap at 2 o'clock, because everybody I've talked to has that same problem or same condition. So it's been a blessing to get into organizations or get connected with people or get connected with opportunities to speak. I mean, the nice thing is that I'm not a shy person. You'll see me close my eyes a lot. That was one of my things. My dementia coach, I used to call her. She was actually a speech therapist at Kaiser, but she actually dealt with a lot of people with dementia. And I used to see her weekly. And we found a strategy is that when I have a hard time finding words, I close my eyes. So, because you have, what as they say, you have 6 senses, and one of your most powerful one is your sight and your hearing. So if I close my eyes, it turns that one off, which, like they say, a blind person's hearing is amplified because now they're paying more attention to that. By closing my eyes, it allows me to try and find words a little bit easier. So for a long time, I used to wear sunglasses everywhere, inside, outside, because I closed my eyes so much when I talk that I got like it bothered me that people would see me or ask me. So I used to, because with dark sunglasses, you couldn't tell if I had my eyes open or closed. So my wife finally got me to break that habit of wearing sunglasses inside and all the time, and just tell people, if I close my eyes a lot, it helps me do my word finding or whatnot.
The most important thing I think you mentioned was getting the proper diagnosis. And I know that there's like 200 different forms of dementia.
And people don't realize that right there. People don't realize that.
But I think the most important thing is what you stated about medication, that depending on what your diagnosis is, there are certain medications that you cannot take that can result in you dying. Kind of go ahead with your research and stuff, because I know you've done a lot of research on everything that you take and how important that is.
Yeah, and I tell people, I get asked all the time, hey, what are some of the things you take? And I explain to them, okay, this is something I take. I don't recommend you take it. I can tell you what I take, but I recommend you do your own research. Like I take a lion's mane mushroom is a one that I've taken for years, and people have heard about it or they haven't heard about it. And I remind them, I said, it's a great thing. Actually, I take it in a form of a pill, and I actually have it in a liquid format. I take it at the same time. But, I could spend a day telling you about it, but you need to do your own research. You need to feel comfortable. I used to tell people, because I invest in stocks a lot, but I keep it to a very small group of stocks because it's hard to follow too many. But I would never buy stock of somebody, hey, Stephen, you need to buy ABC stock. I would never go out and buy that stock unless I researched it, found out what this company does, how long they've been around. I've done my background check versus just going out and buy it. And it's the same thing. And again, my type of dementia, it works for me. My age, my lifestyle, my eating habits or whatever, it works with those things. So I tell people, these are things I take, but I still recommend you do your own research. And I highly recommend you tell your neurologist, because like you said, it could react to some of the medication you take, or you're double taking it. Like I was taking flaxseed oil and DHA. Well, actually, I found out that the coconut and fish oil, the flaxseed oil is very similar to the coconut oil. So the doctor says you can take either one, but the DHA, you're going to get a better benefit. So I would go with the DHA. And that's what I did. Is one time I actually brought her a bag of all my supplements, set it on the thing, and she read through it and she says, do you realize this one has your daily supply of vitamin D, yet you're taking a D supplement as well? So what do you want to do? And then we went through that. This was more of a low potent. So we did away with this. Same thing with the flaxseed. Says you're taking the flaxseed and you're taking this. This is duplicating. You don't need that. So I was taking like, I don't know, 15 to 16 supplements twice a day. And I ended up getting it down to about 12 because some of them were overlapping or whatnot at the same time. But again, there's a lot of research out there. And I have friends that also say, well, have they done, what's it called? Clinical trials on the things. And I said, well, I'm that clinical trial. And I use the example of, I started doing the exercising once I retired, and I felt so much better after the exercise that I made that part of my progress, part of my daily routine. And, then the Alzheimer's Association really came out and endorsed exercise like 3 or 4 years later. Well, I was 3 or 4 years in better shape and ahead of the curve. So I tell people, yeah, some of the things I'm taking, there's no clinical trials yet, but there's also no clinical trials that have happened saying this is, hocus pocus, or this isn't, this is just, the vitamin world trying to sell you something or whatnot. Like Prevagen, if you read Prevagen, you'll see some good reviews about it. And then they've actually done some clinical trials that they didn't get some good reviews. And then they actually got sued for over promising and under delivering on their types of medication. And that's exactly what I tell people. Just because you hear it on a commercial, you see it in a magazine, you still have to do your own research about that. So I do share with what I take, but I always say, talk to your neurologist. They're the best person to have that conversation with.
Go ahead. I want you to talk about some of the advocacy work you do, because I know you work with a lot of groups and doing some amazing things. So I want you to talk a little bit about your advocacy.
Well, the advocacy, the one that actually really got me started is I actually went to just like the name's called, Advocacy Day in Sacramento at our state capitol. And it was actually the Alzheimer's Association was having their walk on the Capitol to talk to our congressman. That was the biggest connection. Tracy and I went to that, and then we ended up getting connected with so many people, with the Alzheimer's Association, with UCSF Davis. And then several years down the road, I was very blessed. I was actually at the speaker for one of those events where there was over 800 people from all over the state of California. And then from there, I got connected with the Alzheimer's Association here local, the person that had done the walk. I didn't even know there was a walk for Alzheimer's here in Modesto. It just hadn't been advertised enough. It didn't get enough support here. And then when I got connected, we really, jump started that event. I know the first year, my team alone raised 10% of the total of what the entire Modesto raised. Just from my group, we ended up raising over 10% of the total funds. And that I've been a big advocate every single year. This year, I wasn't able to do the walk like we normally do. My daughter graduated with her master's degree and finally got to walk in Arizona. So we missed that particular day of the walk, but I tried to do some online fundraising at the same time. And we're actually in the process. That's why it's fuzzed out behind me. Our house is torn apart. We're moving to Idaho. And I was actually on the California Board of Directors for the Alzheimer's Association. And Elizabeth Edgerly recommended me to the gal in Idaho. So they're excited to have me on the board. And for a big reason is that they've never had somebody with dementia on their board, which is funny and yet not funny. And there's a phrase that our good friend Mike uses, and I always try and give him credit for it. Sometimes I use it and I forget to give him credit, but if I said and didn't give him credit, you tattle on me because he uses it. Nothing about me without me, or nothing about us without us. And I use that phrase a lot, that it's surprising that there is a board and you have nobody that's on that board that has dementia. So you're not hearing firsthand about somebody's struggles or different point of views or whatnot on something like that. So I'm looking forward to going to Idaho and being on their board.
I could go on talking to you for a while, but I always ask this of anybody that I have on. If this podcast is the first one you see after a diagnosis, what would your recommendation be to that person?
The first phrase I always tell them is that there is life after a diagnosis of dementia. That's the number one thing, because people, you're going to grieve, you're going to absorb it, you're going to have to get your handle on it your own way. And it's almost kind of like being told that you have a, basically we do have a terminal illness, that you have to wrap your head around it. I started doing some reading and I thought, 6 to 8 years, I'm going to be dead. That's what they said the average time when somebody gets diagnosed. Well, also, that's also somebody who gets diagnosed in, they say 1 through 7 of the stages. That's somebody in stage 6 or maybe even 7 by the time they get a proper diagnosis. So I remind people, no, there's definitely life after diagnosis. Something I also tell people, I didn't put my life on hold once I got my diagnosis. I hit the fast forward button. So literally, when I want to do something, I basically do it that day or the next day. It's not like, in 3 months, we're going to do this. One time, my wife and I were talking about going to Egypt right before COVID really, was out there and everything. I did some research on a trip to Egypt on a Monday. I booked it on a Thursday and we left the following Monday, and a week after that, whereas most people that doing a trip to go to Egypt, it's like 6 months away and planning. I just happened to contacted this group where we got the last 2 seats on the bus within the group or whatnot. And when we booked it on Thursday, the lady said that we won't know until Monday morning if you got the last 2 seats from all over the United States, because everybody's pressing buttons to try and get those seats. So it looks like I got you the seats. We won't know till Monday, but you need to be ready to go because that trip leaves on Tuesday. So when we were actually in Egypt is when all the COVID and everything broke out. We had people that, were trying to fly through China on their way home, and they weren't allowing any planes to go in there. So people had to have their flights rearranged or whatnot. So again, don't put your life on hold. hit the fast forward, do those things that you want to do. I also use the phrase, I want to die with memories, not dreams. And the reason I emphasize that is a memory means you did it. A dream is something you wish you did, you're looking forward to. So you don't want to die with dreams. You want to die with memories. So get out there and do it. And you don't have to stop living. You just have to adjust how you live. There's a phrase called a new normal. You need to nap every day at 2 o'clock. When you go on a trip, you just, you work that into the schedule or whatnot. Or if you're going on a trip and there's guided tours and it's a 7-day trip, maybe on the third day, you don't go on that trip. You just stay back at the hotel and rest all day because you've gone boom, boom, boom for 3 days, which is pretty tough for us to keep going and going, different routine as well. That you just back off that one day. Maybe it's the one thing that you really didn't want to see, or the one thing that wasn't as impressive, where you wanted to see the Sphinx there in Egypt, but you really didn't care about seeing some rug store or whatever. And that's the day, I don't want to see a rug store anyways. That's the day I'm going to stay back and sleep or whatnot and stuff. So, and also I tell people, dementia doesn't signal end of life. Dementia signals change of life. And we just need to change. That's all I'm saying, is that we may not be able to do the same things, but we should be able to do the same things, just with just a little different flavor, just a little different twist to it. Like I did martial arts for 42 years. I still work out, but now there's no contact. I mean, I do boxing mitt work where I'm just hitting a boxing pad where the coach is out calling combinations. So it's good for my cardio, but at the same time, as soon as I get a combination, he'll change it and says, okay, instead of 3-2-1, now 4-3-6. And I've got to change it. Or he says reverse, and he's messing with my mind on purpose. So I get like a brain exercise as well as a cardio exercise. Now, would I ever get in a ring and box against somebody? I would love to, but I know I can't do that anymore. I have a lot of friends that do martial arts. We work out, but if we spar, it's more like just throwing close to each other. It's no more, I can't do contact anymore. So that's one thing. I can still do the martial arts. I just have to step away from the contact part of it or whatnot. So it's just a matter of adjusting. But again, you have to adjust to the disease too. And I always tell people, it's important to self-educate yourself about your disease. I mean, if you ask me things about CT, I could probably tell you more than most people know. But if you ask me about Alzheimer's, because to be honest with you, I don't read as much about that because it's not my disease. And that's the beauty of being in different groups, like with the dementia minds. There was people that had vascular dementia, Alzheimer's, white matter disease, CTE dementia, Lewy body dementia. The nice thing is that we're all similar, but we're all different at the same time. So we could add a different voice. And plus, I learned from other people in those groups by what they say or whatnot. And like if somebody asked me about Lewy body dementia, I wouldn't try and hold a conversation about it. I could have a very low level, big brushstroke conversation with them. But if they really needed more details, I say, hey, I got a buddy, Mike. Let me ask him. If he doesn't mind, you give him a call. And because a lot of us don't mind sharing or talking. I use the phrase newbies. I love talking to newbies because I want to get them encouragement, because that was something I couldn't find right away. It was somebody like me, which I think is so important. And that's what I tell somebody. If you get a diagnosis, it's not end of life. There is life after diagnosis, but try and get connected with people like you, similar ages, similar areas or whatnot. And don't try and get in that big lump sum of, oh, here's a call for everybody. Well, you're going to get frustrated on that call because some people could be at dementia level 6 and you're at level 3, and the conversation is too slow, or it's you understand what the people are going through, but at the same time, you're trying to get some healing, or you're trying to get connected, or you're trying to share with people, and you're not able to share because of people at different levels. So it's really important to try and find people like us.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I'm really looking forward to this coming out and people, getting a lot of their questions answered, and can look at you and say, wow, look what he's done. I can do the same thing. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Chuck, I appreciate the opportunity and the friendship. And I'll be honest with you, we really miss you and Mike tremendously.
Well, I miss being with you guys too. I'd like to thank Dementia Action Alliance for their support on behalf of This Dementia Life. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. You can view other podcasts on our website, danow.org. Click on podcast. Please join again to meet the most inspiring and amazing people on this Dementia Life. I'm your host, Chuck McClatchy, and remember, the brain may forget, but the heart never will. We'll see you next time on this Dementia Life. Thank you.